When Freddie Mercury walked onto the stage at Wembley Stadium on July 12, 1986, before 72,000 roaring fans, he didn't know that this night would become his final full concert performance. What nobody in that crowd realized was that beneath the yellow military jacket and the boundless energy, he was already carrying a secret that would change everything. And it all began when a young man named Marcus Whitfield managed to slip past security with one desperate purpose. July 12, 1986, Wembley Stadium, London. The air was electric with anticipation as Queen prepared to headline the Magic Tour, their biggest production yet. The stage was massive, draped in lights that pulsed like a living heartbeat. Freddie stood backstage, his trademark mustache perfectly groomed, his eyes scanning the set list one more time. This was supposed to be triumph personified. Queen at their absolute peak, sold-out stadiums across Europe, music that had already become immortal. But Freddie felt different that night, tired, a fatigue that went deeper than sleepless nights on tour buses. He'd noticed things, small things, a persistent cough. Weight dropping off without trying, he brushed it aside. Tonight was about the music, about giving these people something they'd never forget. In the crowd, pressed against the barrier near the front, stood Marcus Whitfield. 23 years old, a hospital orderly from Brighton. Marcus had sandy brown hair that fell across his forehead, pale skin that hadn't seen much sun, and hands that trembled as he clutched the railing. He'd spent his last paycheck on this ticket, hitchhiked to London, slept in the train station the night before, because Marcus needed to be here, had to be here. 6 months earlier, Marcus had been diagnosed with a rare blood disorder. The doctors used words like aggressive and limited options. His younger sister Elena was only 19. She'd dropped out of university to take care of him during treatments. Marcus watched her sacrifice everything, watched the light dim in her eyes, and he couldn't bear it. He'd decided weeks ago. After tonight, he'd tell her to go back to school. He'd stop the treatments. He couldn't keep being the anchor pulling her down, but first he needed this. One night where he wasn't sick Marcus. Just Marcus. A kid who'd grown up listening to Queen on his father's record player, who'd sung Bohemian Rhapsody into a hairbrush when no one was watching, who'd dreamed of seeing them live just once. The lights dropped, the crowd exploded, and Freddie Mercury stepped into the spotlight like he was stepping into immortality itself. He opened with One Vision, and Marcus felt the music vibrate through his chest like a second heartbeat. Freddie commanded that stage like a king, surveying his kingdom, every gesture precise, every note perfect. But there was something else there too. Something Marcus recognized because he'd seen it in his own mirror. A man performing despite the weight he carried. A man giving everything he had left. The concert blazed through, hit after hit. Tie Your Mother Down. In the Lap of the Gods. The crowd sang back every word, 72,000 voices merging into something divine. Marcus lost himself in it. For those precious hours, he wasn't dying. He was alive. Truly devastatingly alive. Then came Bohemian Rhapsody. The moment Marcus had waited for. As Freddie's voice soared through those impossible notes, Marcus felt tears streaming down his face. Not sad tears, grateful ones. This was enough. This moment right here. This was enough to make everything worth it. But here's the part that nobody saw coming. As the final notes faded, something inside Marcus broke open. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Maybe it was the realization that this was the last beautiful thing he'd allow himself before giving up. Maybe it was the way Freddie looked in that moment, illuminated and immortal, and somehow heartbreakingly human all at once. Marcus climbed over the barrier. Security moved immediately, but Marcus was faster. He sprinted across the open space between the crowd and the stage, his hospital bracelet still on his wrist, catching the lights. The crowd gasped. Freddie turned mid-breath as this young man pulled himself onto the stage. "Please," Marcus said, his voice cracking, "I just need to say thank you." The stadium went silent. You could hear 72,000 people holding their breath. Freddie stood there, microphone in hand, and for a moment nobody knew what would happen. Security was seconds away from grabbing Marcus. The logical thing would be to let them, to keep the show moving, to maintain the distance between legend and fan. But Freddie Mercury had never been interested in logical. He held up one hand, stopping security in their tracks. He walked toward Marcus, closing the distance until they were standing face to face. Up close, Freddie could see the hospital bracelet, the hollow circles under the young man's eyes, the way his hands shook. "What's your name?" Freddie asked, his voice gentle but carrying through the stadium speakers. "Marcus Whitfield." "Well, Marcus Whitfield, you certainly know how to make an entrance." A ripple of laughter moved through the crowd, breaking the tension. But Freddie's eyes never left Marcus's face. "Tell me, what did you need to say?" Marcus's voice broke. "I'm sick, really sick, and I've been thinking about giving up. But tonight, listening to you, I remembered what it feels like to actually be here, to be present, to feel something." Tears streamed down his face now. "I just wanted to thank you for reminding me that being alive, even when it's hard, is still worth it." The stadium was so quiet you could hear the wind moving through the upper decks. Freddie reached out and gripped Marcus's shoulder. When he spoke, his voice carried a weight that nobody in that audience could fully understand yet. Years later, when the truth came out, they would remember this moment differently. But right then they just heard compassion. "Listen to me," Freddie said. "I don't know what you're facing. I don't know how hard it is. But I know this. Every single person in this stadium has something they're fighting. Every single one. You're not alone in that. And the fight, Marcus, the fight is what makes us human. The getting up, the showing up, the refusing to let the darkness win." He paused, his grip tightening. "Promise me something. Promise me you'll keep fighting. Not for me, not for them, for yourself. For the chance to have another night like this, another moment where you feel alive." Marcus nodded, unable to speak. "I want you to stay right here," Freddie said. He turned to the band, to Brian May standing with his guitar. A look passed between them, a nod. Then Freddie turned back to the microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a special guest tonight. This is Marcus. He's going through something difficult, and he's going to stand right here while we play the next song. Because sometimes we all need a reminder that we're not facing our battles alone." The crowd erupted. Applause that shook the stadium foundations. Freddie counted off, and Queen launched into "We Are the Champions." Marcus stood there on that massive stage while 72,000 people sang, while Freddie Mercury himself put an arm around his shoulders and held him steady. While the music washed over everything like a baptism, he felt something shift inside him. Not a cure, not a miracle, but something equally powerful, a reason, a purpose, a promise. When the song ended, Freddie walked Marcus to the side of the stage, away from the microphones. Security hovered nearby, but at a respectful distance. "You're going to keep that promise?" Freddie asked quietly. "Yes," Marcus said, "I swear." Freddie pulled something from around his neck, a simple silver chain with a small medallion. "My father gave this to me," he said, "for protection, for strength. I want you to have it." "I can't take that," Marcus protested. "You can. You will." Freddie pressed it into Marcus's hand, closing his fingers around it. "When it gets dark, when you want to give up, hold this. Remember tonight. Remember that you promised." Marcus's fingers tightened around the medallion. "Why are you doing this?" Freddie's smile was sad and knowing. "Because some of us know what it's like to carry secrets that feel too heavy, because kindness costs nothing, and because you climbed up here looking for a reason to stay. I'm just making sure you find it." He hugged Marcus then. Not a celebrity hug, a real one. The kind that means something. When Marcus was finally escorted gently off stage, back through the crowd that parted for him with pats on the back and whispered encouragements, Freddie returned to the microphone. "This next one's for everyone who's fighting something," and he said, "for everyone who needs a reminder that they're stronger than they know." They played "The Show Must Go On," and though it wouldn't be released for 5 more years, in that moment it felt like prophecy. Like a promise Freddie was making to himself, as much as to Marcus, as much as to everyone. The months that followed changed everything for Marcus Whitfield. He went back to Brighton, back to treatment, back to his sister Elena, who cried when she saw the medallion around his neck and heard the story. The treatments were brutal. There were days he wanted to quit, days he couldn't get out of bed, Days the pain felt like too much, but every time he'd reach for that silver chain, feel the weight of the promise he'd made, and somehow he'd find the strength to keep going. A year later, against all odds, Marcus went into remission. His doctors called it remarkable. Marcus called it a promise kept. He returned to school, became a counselor specializing in helping terminally ill patients. He never took off the medallion, and whenever someone asked about it, he told them the story. Not as a celebrity encounter, but as the night someone reminded him that fighting was worth it. For Freddie Mercury, the Magic Tour became his final full concert tour. Within months, he would begin to face his own devastating diagnosis. AIDS was still largely misunderstood in 1986, still carrying stigma and fear. Freddie would spend the next 5 years fighting his own battle, creating music until his final days, refusing to let the darkness win. He never spoke publicly about meeting Marcus, but years later, after Freddie's death in November 1991, Marcus would learn something that broke his heart and mended it simultaneously. Jim Hutton, Freddie's partner, reached out to Marcus after seeing him interviewed about that night at Wembley. They met for tea in London, and Jim told him something Freddie had shared. "He talked about you sometimes," Jim said quietly, "about the young man who climbed on stage. He said it reminded him why the music mattered, why showing up mattered, even when you're exhausted, even when you're fighting something no one else can see." Jim paused, his own eyes wet. "I think, in a way, you helped him too. Reminded him that kindness echoes, that one moment can change everything." Marcus founded a charity in 2000 called the Medallion Project. It provides support for young people facing terminal or chronic illnesses, focusing on finding reasons to keep fighting. Every person who participates receives a medallion, not unlike the one Freddie gave him, each one engraved with a simple phrase, "The fight is what makes us human." The charity has helped over 10,000 young people in the past 2 decades. Some beat their illnesses, some didn't, but all of them had someone telling them that their fight mattered, that they weren't alone, that showing up, even on the hardest days, was an act of courage. Marcus still has the original medallion. He's been offered enormous sums for it from collectors. He's refused every offer, because it was never about the object, it was about the promise, the moment, the reminder that even legends are just humans trying to do their best with the time they have. When people ask Marcus what he learned that night at Wembley Stadium, he always gives the same answer. "I learned that we're all fighting something, every single one of us, and the most powerful thing we can do is be kind to each other in the middle of our battles, acknowledge the fight, honor it, and remind each other that we're stronger than we know." Freddie Mercury walked off that stage after the Magic Tour finale, exhausted and already feeling the first whispers of the illness that would take him. But he'd done something that night that would ripple forward through time. He'd stopped, he'd listened, he'd chosen compassion over convenience, and in doing so, he'd saved a life, created a legacy that extended far beyond the music, because that's what real immortality looks like, not the records or the fame, but the moments of genuine human connection, the times we choose to see each other's pain and respond with kindness, the promises we keep even when keeping them is hard. Marcus Whitfield is 58 years old now, still in remission, still wearing that medallion, still working with young people who need a reason to keep fighting. And every July 12th he plays "We Are the Champions" and remembers the night a legend reminded him that being alive, even when it's impossibly hard, is still the greatest gift we're given. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of a moment when someone's kindness changed everything, I'd be grateful if you'd hit that like button and share this video. Tell us in the comments about a time someone showed you unexpected compassion when you needed it most. Sometimes the stories we share become the reasons others keep fighting. And we've got more stories like this one coming, stories about the moments when humanity shines through the darkness. Subscribe so you don't miss them, because we all need reminders that kindness echoes, that promises matter, and that every single one of us has the power to change someone's world. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And thank you for choosing compassion.